How's it going, everyone? Sorry, phone weather SpongeBob. Today is September 14th, 2021, and today we're going to take a look at three tropical disturbances which are currently in the Atlantic at this time and see which ones could impact the United States. Well, before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. So let's begin by taking a look at the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook provided from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. And we do see Tropical Storm Nicholas is currently hugging the Texas coast at this point with maximum sustained winds at 40 miles per hour. Central millibar pressure down to 1,003 millibars, and it's moving slowly to the east-northeast at 6 miles per hour, and it's expected to dump a lot of rain throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. And we also have disturbance 2, which has a likely chance of formation around the 60% chance of formation within the next 5 days and could come uncomfortably close to the East Coast. And we also have this other disturbance coming off the west coast of Africa that will likely develop into Tropical Storm Odette within the next coming days and will likely impact the Caribbean as well, and may impact the Caribbean and potentially the United States in the future. So let's first talk about this disturbance number 1, located just off the west coast of Africa at this time. Taking a look at the water vapor imagery, you see that there isn't as much convection as there was beforehand. However, this tropical wave is still expected to develop into a tropical cyclone within the next coming days, and you see that the surrounding air around it is quite unstable and will definitely promote convection because we don't see the darker black contours which represent dry or stable air, as you see that it's under a fairly moist environment right now, and there is a potential behind this tropical wave. We could see more tropical waves come off the west coast and have another shot of developing into a tropical storm. So there's certainly we're gonna certainly need to watch the west coast of Africa within the next couple of days. However, as of right now, this is a tropical wave we are watching, which will likely develop. It's under a very unstable environment, and there isn't a lot of dry or stable air around it to limit this from developing. As I do expect these cluster of thunderstorms to develop, and we should see a center of circulation form within one of these clusters of thunderstorms, more likely here because we do see a little bit of rotation here within this center of circulation, and as we begin to see more convection, that will allow for a fully formed center of circulation with winds and air molecules surrounding it to develop into a tropical cyclone. So this will likely develop into Tropical Storm Odette in the future. Taking a look at the obstacles it has in the future to determine what type of strength you should expect potential tropical storm Odette to be within the next couple of days. You see that this is how the wind shear looks right now in the tropical Atlantic, and we do see that there's a little bit of wind shear over this storm, over this tropical wave. However, this wind shear isn't strong enough to completely inhibit its development within the next couple of days, as it seems inevitable this will develop. And another thing is that the upper level winds are going the same direction as the lower level winds, so that won't make the wind shear as strong as it would be if the upper level winds were going against the lower level winds. Since the upper level winds and the lower level winds are coinciding with each other towards the same direction, that makes it a lot easier for tropical cyclones to develop in that fashion, because then there's less fighting, or there's less divergence of heat molecules around the center of circulation. So as a result, we will see this develop as a result of light wind shear and the upper level winds pretty much going the same direction as the lower level winds, and that will make it quite a favorable environment for development within the next couple of days. However, since the wind shear will be over the storm as a result of this upper level high just to the north of it, it won't really explode in development, although it's over water temperatures more than warm enough to support tropical cyclone development within the next several days. So that's certain. So it won't really develop very rapidly because we're still going to see those strong upper level winds prevail over the main development region of the Atlantic, and that should that should limit it from really gradually intensifying into at a very fast rate. However, beyond the 120-hour mark, once we see this upper level high begin to weaken a little bit and the wind shear die down towards the the western part of the main development region, we will see an area where the wind shear will be light and the conditions will be more favorable for this storm to intensify more rapidly, because you see that the GFS model brings us down to 995 millibars right around between the 5 to 6 day mark, and it's going to be just going to be just to the east of the Caribbean islands at this time. And while there still will be an upper level high over this storm, the wind shear won't really affect it much, as you can see, as the GFS model isn't really expecting the upper level high to have a huge effect. However, if we even go further out into the 7-day mark, the wind shear will eventually begin to win out, but there's still a lot of uncertainty regarding how much wind shear will be located in the Caribbean by this time. It really all depends on location of this upper level high, which still has yet to be seen, because there's going to be a lot of uncertainty when we're forecasting something beyond the 7-day mark, or even beyond the 5-day mark. The uncertainty definitely is pretty high, so we just need to wait and see how the upper level highs maneuver over the next several days to determine if this will have a chance of strengthening into a hurricane or potentially a major hurricane in the future. And in terms of the relative humidity within the mid levels of the atmosphere, there will also be the question of how much dry air will be located. Currently, the GFS model is forecasting this storm to entrain a little bit of dry air once this heads close to the Caribbean, so that might limit its development a little bit, especially if we do see strong wind shear, which will push a lot of that stable air into this storm. However, for the next couple of days, dry air won't be a major issue, as the majority of dry air will stay to the north of it. However, it will change once this heads further eastward and we begin to see dry air entrain the western side of this storm. But again, there's still a lot of uncertainty that remains. The good news is that the GFS model is currently forecasting that dry air and to wind shear to eventually win out and weaken the storm to a low-end tropical storm. But if we go even further out, which I don't even want to go that much further out, you see that GFS model wants to re-strengthen this into a hurricane past where this upper level low is located and where the dry air is located. So just a lot to see over the next several days, but I'll make sure to update you guys regarding how much dry air and wind shear there will be. However, over the next several days, I will pretty much say that Tropical Storm Odette will form, and it'll most likely be maybe strong and tropical storm to low and hurricane in the main development region, especially later in the forecast time. But there's certainly still that possibility this just remains a weak tropical storm as it moves through the main development region if the wind shear is stronger than expected. But more likely than not, I expect a strong tropical storm in the main development region. Taking a look at what the European model is saying regarding the strength of the storm, the European model is also predicting a tropical storm to move through. However, it doesn't really expect a strong tropical storm, as it could be that the wind shear could be very strong in the European model's forecast. So while a tropical storm is likely, how much it will strengthen, it remains to be seen depending on the wind shear. But I'll update you guys as we get further updates. Now, in terms of the track forecasts, we've pretty much the main steering flow will be this Bermuda Ridge over the next several days. However, beyond, I'd say, the 5-day mark is when we run into some questions, because the European model, interestingly, is taking what will likely become Tropical Storm Peter to linger just off the northeast coast. And what that would mean is that it would create a weakness in ridging in the western Atlantic, and that will sort of suck in Tropical Storm Odette into Tropical Storm Peter, which will mean that it will move directly further northward, and it would avoid the Caribbean islands and most likely the United States if this scenario were to occur, which would certainly be good news. However, the GFS model isn't forecasting that, as it pretty much expects Tropical Storm Peter, or what will likely become Tropical Storm Peter, to drift out into the open Atlantic, and there won't be enough weakness and ridging in the western Atlantic for this storm to move along with Peter and to just drift into the northern Atlantic along with Peter. So the GFS model expects this oncoming ridge right around September 22nd to move into the western Atlantic, and that could create a scenario where this storm moves closer to the Caribbean islands and potentially the United States. If we were to go even further out, it still expects this ridge to move quite fast and a weakness in ridging to occur, which would drift it out to sea. But we can't rule out all the possibilities just yet, because there's still that possibility that this ridge could linger around, this could move west, or Peter lingers around and this could move northward. Just a lot of questions remain, but I'll update you guys as the computer models become more confident with the forecast. Now, taking a look at the water temperatures in the Mediterranean region, you see that this storm is located right around this area, so it shouldn't have much of a problem in terms of the sea surface temperatures when developing. So as a result, I do expect this to develop this should be able to develop under sea surface temperatures like this, but it might go, what might limit it is this little cold patch right here. While it's still right around the 80-degree mark, it isn't it isn't like so warm that to the point where you will experience rapid intensification. It's not until we get into the Caribbean where we could see more rapid intensification as a result of warmer water temperatures in this region. So it could take a while for this to develop, and the consensus is that this will develop later, but this still could certainly gradually intensify as this moves through this cold patch, because again, it's over that 80-degree threshold, or right around that 80-degree threshold. Now, taking a look at what else that is in the Atlantic, we of course have Tropical Storm Nicholas, which is currently impacting the southeast United States still with heavy rain, and hasn't weakened from a tropical storm, as currently it's around a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and you see that it's very disorganized at this point. There's a lot of wind shear over this storm. The center of circulation is currently over land, I'd say right around here, and you see that the center of circulation is completely exposed to the dry and stable air this wind shear is bringing, or this trough is bringing throughout into the center of circulation. And you see the clouds and convection drifting towards the east, which would mean that a lot of the areas further east of the center of circulation will experience a heavy rain and potentially the flooding of Tropical Storm Nicholas within the next coming days, and this could even extend to Florida. So this is certainly something you guys along the Gulf Coast still need to pay close attention to, because flooding is likely from the remnants, or at least what currently is Tropical Storm Nicholas as of right now. Taking a look at the current radar, if we were to continue to move forward, you see that if we were taking a look at the radar over the past several hours, you see that this rain isn't moving very fast, and the center of circulation, I'd say, is just to the east of Houston at this time, and you see that the squalls aren't moving very fast, so flash flooding is likely throughout Louisiana, I'd say, especially right around this region where majority of the rainfall is located. You see that this extends close to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Gulfport is getting involved, and even Alabama and Florida, despite the center of circulation being this far to the west of where all the rain is located. And we will continue to see and we will continue to see thunderstorm activity just to the east of this storm, because currently Tropical Storm Nicholas is bringing a strong southerly flow over the very warm Gulf of Mexico, and that's pretty much spacing out the air molecules to absorb more water vapor in the atmosphere. And as it condenses into land, it's going to condense in the form of heavy rain and thunderstorms throughout the Gulf Coast, and that should create a major flash flooding threat along the Gulf Coast. And here's Tropical Storm Nicholas right now. Tropical storm warnings are still issued throughout the east coast of Texas at this time, and this extends Louisiana. However, it is of course expected to weaken into a tropical depression as it moves over land and loses contact with the warm Gulf of Mexico water, and as the wind shear continues to absorb this storm and disintegrate this storm. However, the rain will still remain despite this weakening into a tropical depression. Taking a look at the rain within the next 3 days, you see that there's still a large area along the Gulf Coast still forecasted to receive around 6 to 10 inches of rain, which includes New Orleans, Mobile, Gulfport, Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, and even Pensacola, Florida will get involved with over 6 inches of rain, which would be devastating, would bring a lot of flooding in those regions. So just because this is expected to weaken into a tropical depression, or not even or it won't even be considered a tropical cyclone at this point, does not mean you need to completely disregard the forecast for Tropical Storm Nicholas at this time, because it's still going to bring just a massive amount of rainfall along the Gulf Coast. And this is especially unfortunate for southeastern Louisiana, because you guys just been impacted hard by the flooding of Tropical Storm Ida, and to add another 6 to 10 inches of rain on top of that is definitely concerning and will cause a lot of flooding in that region. So make sure to pay close attention to the radar and heed your warnings from your officials, because it is likely we're going to see flooding throughout the Gulf Coast. And remember, if you see a puddle of water, turn around, don't drown, because typically the puddle of water is a lot deeper than you'd expect. And if we were to take a look at the flash flood risk over the next couple of days, you see that there's a moderate risk all throughout Louisiana, and even a high risk right around Lake Charles, Louisiana, as a result of the eye moving through, and that will allow for a lot more convection in right around center circulation. But you see that the flash flood risk will extend to Thursday morning, as well as even as late as Friday morning, where there's still a slight risk of flash flooding. So make sure to, if you live in a small stream, to keep in mind that the flash flood risk is high for your area, and flash flooding could occur fast. So make sure to keep that in mind along the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. Now, taking a look at our next tropical disturbance, which could potentially impact the East Coast, is this invest, which is currently just to the east of the Bahamas at this point. And you see that we're now beginning to see a little bit more convection around the surface low, and it's expected to move northward, and it could be an area where the wind shear will be light. It's currently the air is quite unstable for convection to occur. There isn't a lot of dry air outside of the dry air that's well to the west of it at this point, right around the Carolinas. And while there is a little bit of wind shear, as you could probably tell based off where the clouds are moving, that's coming from the west, it isn't enough to really inhibit this storm from having a lot of convection and potentially developing a center circulation within the next couple of days. Taking a look at the forecasted GFS model is giving with this storm, you see that GFS model wants to develop this because it's going to be under an area where the wind shear will be relatively light for the most part, while there is a little bit of an upper level high just to the east of this storm. You see that it's going to be in a small area where the wind shear will be light enough to support tropical cyclone development, and it should continue as it moves further northward and could come close to the coast of North Carolina. It really all depends on location of this Bermuda Ridge to see how close it gets to North Carolina and the position of the upper level winds, because that will also play a factor in terms of where exactly this will go. But it could come close enough to North Carolina where you guys could experience thunder shower activity and a high rip current risk if this does develop into Tropical Storm Peter, which is more likely than not at this point. And the good news is that the GFS model sort of wants to steer this off the East Coast, so there shouldn't be much of a major threat for the Northeast Coast. However, the rip current risk still could remain, and especially on the eastern tips of potentially Massachusetts and Long Island, you could experience some rain showers associated with this and maybe tropical storm-like conditions if this moves just to the west enough. We just need to wait and see where exactly that Bermuda Ridge will be positioned, as well as this trough, because that will be a big determinant in where this will exactly steer this storm over the next several days. So that's certainly something you guys along East Coast need to keep in mind. There could be a rip current risk, and North Carolina, you could experience a heavy rainfall threat associated with potential tropical storm Peter, as the wind shear should be relatively light to make conditions favorable enough for tropical cyclone development. This is my current forecast check. North Carolina, the Outer Banks are in the cone, and even Virginia Beach, as I can't rule out the possibility this moves further westward. However, I'd say more likely than not, this will likely stay offshore, but impacts to the Outer Banks and potentially Virginia and Delmar Peninsula could certainly happen in the form of heavy rain and a high rip current risk. So make sure to keep that in mind. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather calls. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a good day.